This is the Modern Mastery Unleashed podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Modern Self-Mastery Unleashed, the podcast with Paul Davidson and myself, Natalia Edelmann, as your hosts. We are super excited to be here with you today. We all are feeling the change of season, aren't we? And whether you're in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere, the weather is changing, but you're also probably feeling some change. So we thought we'd talk about the art of change, transition to transcendence. And what we really mean by that is those moments of in your life where you feel that change is happening, but maybe you don't even realize actually that you need a change. So we're going to kick things off with, how do you know you need a change? I remember this was one thing I first started writing about when I started, and I know Paul's going to come in here and share his story as well. But the first time I really noticed it was when I was in my corporate job, and I was just at this point of my life where I was just feeling disenchanted with life. And we're going to actually kind of list a few things here, because sometimes it's really obvious when you know you need a change, like if you're changing jobs, or you're ending a relationship, or there's maybe a death in the family. But sometimes they're not so obvious. So let's talk a little bit, Paul, about when how do you know you need a change when maybe it's not that obvious? What do you think? What are your thoughts initially?
I think, and what a title. I mean, let's start there. We all want some of that, don't we? I think it's beginning with truth, isn't it? Truth with ourselves. It's like when someone asks you, how are you? And you say, I'm really good. But what we don't want is but how are you really?
Yeah.
And I had a conversation this weekend at an incredible event, Kaleidoscope, a charity ball. It was absolutely unbelievable, to do with mental health, and an incredibly high-flying lady I spoke to. She said, I'm just tired. I love what I do, but I am just tired. I need to take 6 months off. And everything is telling me to take 6 months off. But as we discussed in our last podcast, the body's keeping score, right?
Mm-hmm.
The body's keeping score. And the hips don't lie. The hips don't lie. Shakira knew it. It's infinite wisdom. It's just noticing those things, and we have a habit of just keep going, don't we? And I think that's where the slow, brutal unraveling begins. And I think that depends where you are, doesn't it? I think if you're a high performer and everyone around you isn't spotting it, but there's a unraveling that begins where you're not so vibrant, you don't come up with so many ideas, and you realize, I am just going through the motions, and life is starting to lose its color and vibrant hues during the day, and you're just not that in love with life, and you're just going through the motions. I think that's that level up when you're a high performer and you're just starting to feel that. Or you're at the point where, like you quite rightly said, either an event's happened or you just feel a bit lost.
Yeah.
And you're taking on inspirational, motivational content and doing nothing with it. We've probably all been there. We're not immune to that. But you feel a level of frustration, which is a good thing, because it means you haven't given up. And that's what we want to create for our listeners, is a place to be where you don't feel so alone in this process. And we'll give you some practical takeaways. But I always feel this time of year, I'll put my teeth back in, is separation season. This is separation season. So it can be a time of year where people are just already winding down to Christmas. I don't feel that's our listeners, but you can think, okay, well, I'll just get to it next year. We'll do all this goal setting stuff and all that next year. That'll be, it's just to start easing off a bit. I've worked hard this year and I want to start the countdown to Christmas right now. Because I'm just tired and I've kind of had enough of this year. But it's separation season, and I think for the people that want to make progress, to take a hard stop and assess it, get aligned, and just feel that activation energy within us again. We all want to feel more aliveness, don't we? Get that vibrancy back. And I think that's what it is. You feel like you're just going through the motions, and that you know that you just feel a little off.
Yeah. Those are definitely like the signs that you need a change. So, we talked about the more obvious ones. You've been made redundant, or you're starting a new business, or you're pivoting in your business, which is probably where our listeners are more likely to be, or you've got you feel it physically or emotionally, like you feel tired. I know for me, and we did talk about with Kaz last week, but when I was in that phase, it was like my hips were hurting. I felt tired all the time. You can start turning to drugs or alcohol because you're just, like I said, disenchanted with life. And there was a really, not for this episode, but there was a really fascinating TED Talk on addiction. And it was talking about how people and you can be a functional addict, I think, to a certain extent, and you think, oh, it's not so bad, like a glass of wine a day, it's all good. But I think it's more the time when you start, like, I remember myself, like I started having Baileys in the morning with my morning coffee on the way to work, just to get through the day. I'm not even joking. And this is like back in my corporate days, and I was like, what am I doing? And part of me was like, is anyone going to even figure this out? And I was just like, whatever, I'm just going to have a little bit. It was just like a little shot, nothing crazy. You start to sort of think like, this is not healthy. Like, what am I doing? And you start to think, if I don't make a change now, like what is actually going to happen? And I think, you mentioned quite rightly, like, life loses color. You start to be disenchanted. You start to go on autopilot. You start to feel lost. You start to feel confused. You start to feel like everything is overcomplicated. You start taking so many things on. You say yes to everything. You feel like you're doing everything, but actually you're accomplishing nothing. And so that really feeds into your just mental state, your emotional state, your whole state of being, which is massively critical to modern self-mastery, isn't it? And, you can start to feel like you're in this funk, right? Like, I think that's the only way I can try to describe it. So we kind of started to touch on it, but how do you snap yourself out of this funk? And you said, you just have to do it. You just have to make a choice to take a chance, or your life will never change. And I love that saying, but you just have to start. It's almost like you just have to go snap and just think, okay, now's the now or never time. Now's the now or never chance. Now or never opportunity. But then what do you do? So let's talk about that a little bit.
It's good. I mean, I mean, you brought up a lot there, and I think that's a good sense check, isn't it? Is like, how reliant am I on these coping mechanisms, and what are they looking like? Am I watching more Netflix? Am I eating more sweets during the day because I'm needing some kind of sugar rush just to give me some feel good? Is the comfort eating increasing? Are you moving less and watching more screens? What's that looking like? Like, how are you coping? Because you're coping one way or another, but maybe not in a good way. And I think the first step is acceptance. And this is something that I haven't been good at in the past, of just accepting where I am. Don't have to like it, but surrender to where I am. Again, because we discussed because all of these weave into the same fabric of human behavior and life, right? So accepting where you are. I might say, look, it might not be, I don't have to like it, but I have to accept where I am and take a knee, have a hard stop, and think, okay, look, where am I right now? And what does that look like? And if I continue doing what I'm doing, where am I going to be in 5 years' time? Because the compound effect is real either way. So am I getting worse or better, in line with what I say I'm wanting? And if you're unsure what that is, I think first we have to take a hard stop. We have to have some radical honesty with ourselves and come back to truth, which might not be easy, but it's worth it. And then we come back to a bit of essentialism, don't we? Like, if we adopt that our self-worth comes from leaving ourselves on the table, leaving it all out there, that we've done all we can in a pursuit of something we really care about. If you take your self-worth from that, you realize, okay, I can't take everything on. And you want to do meaningful work. So if you do something that you find a lot of meaning and contribution in, you're less likely to be burnt out. I think burnout occurs where you still put an 80-hour week into something you don't find meaningful. But if you put 80 hours into something you find meaningful and contribution, and it's making the lives of our brothers and sisters on this earth walk better, you're less likely to feel burned out. But even at that point, like, we still go through that. We're not machines, right? We go through that. But I think we have to take a hard stop and have some radical honesty about where I am, where I want to be, what are my values, what do they look like, and my top 5 values compared to my life right now. Do they look totally different? Are they estranged? Because if my highest values are not forming part of my days, how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. It's not magically just going to happen at some point down the road in the future, right? We've got to make it happen. As Nat obviously knows that one, the Make It Happen.
That was the name of my very first
mentorship
program.
And if anyone doesn't know that, I mean, where have you been? I mean, it's one of those things. But yeah, I mean, I've certainly been, because denial is not a river in Egypt, right? So I've been there before. I just have a tendency just to keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep going. But I think, we don't have to be a machine. We can take a hard stop and just have a reassess and readjust. And it's like an aeroplane, right? So it might set off at a certain point and it knows its destination, but it's course correcting continually. It's off course like 98% of the time. So you have to keep course correcting. So if you're not course correcting every week by assessing, this is what I wanted to get done, this is important to me, this is how I wanted to live, how did I do? And you're not continually course correcting, it's like, if you don't know where you're going, any wind is favorable. So we've got to, I think one of the biggest causes of kind of depression and negative emotion is not knowing where you're going.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to be disciplined and motivated when you don't have a reason to be, and there's no immediate consequence to spinning your wheels. But we have to understand we have a biological need for growth and progress. And I know from personal experience that when I don't make progress, I will be punished for it. My brain will punish me for it. And it's a very unpleasant feeling because it's suffering effectively. So I think just acceptance, clarity on where you are and where you want to go. Doesn't have to be a 10-year vision, but a year, what does a year ahead look like?
Yeah.
We can delve into that a bit deeper, can't we? But then, and what's the process that you need to adhere to? I put the teeth back in again. It's the second time. Too much caffeine again. But I think understanding the process then and letting go of the outcome. So grasping the process tightly, but letting go of the outcome will ultimately take you there. But understanding that if you want to be a good life partner, someone who's great at business, but you want to be a good influence in the world and you want family around you, it's like, well, what habits and behaviors and actions would you need on a daily basis to ensure those things are in your life when you're 80 years old?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want to be a great partner and that's not happening right now, if you want a great relationship, or you want your business to have a massive contribution in the world, or whatever that looks like, if those things are not woven into your day, that is not going to happen. And so we've got to live a lifetime in a day, is what I'm saying. You want to touch on those points that make you feel absolutely alive. I don't subscribe to the grind. I believe that you should work furiously and relentlessly for like 4 to 5, like the 5 great hours, and then spend the rest of that time in balance and reflection and the sort of the hot and cold. You need the polarity, because that's nature, isn't it? Nature is polarity, and polarity works really well. So you can't have hot without cold, and so it can't all be fire and you bring in fire and having no balance and reflection in your life. It's a multitude, isn't it? But again, a very long answer to a question. So my apologies for listeners.
It's like that yin and yang, though, and you rightly said that balance. And if I think about it from a Wellness 360 perspective, that the career Wellness 360, you have, these internal layers, external layers, and energetic layers. And if you look at your career life element, that, externally, it's the work that you do. Internally, it's that work-life balance. And then energetically, it is that action and impact. And that's really what makes you feel alive. So when you look at the energetic layers of each of your life elements, you start to think, okay, I can see how this is either filling my cup or not filling my cup in a way. And you start to sort of say, well, what are the activities that I do in each of these life areas that fill me with energy, or make me feel energetic, that make me feel good about what I'm doing, or who I'm being, rather. And we're talking here about some real practical strategies. And when Paul and I first started Modern Self-Mastery Unleashed, we knew that we were going to bring together our experiences, our expertise, our frameworks for doing things. And, we hit on a lot of key themes, vision, values, accountability, and when you want to hit that reset button, there is a way to go about doing it so that you're not on your own. And Paul and I are crafting, we're putting together something that we're going to talk about and launch in a few weeks. But, the idea of giving you that space where you can safely set that hit that reset button and literally come back to life in a way that you're now ready to, because you're in this constant evolution of life. And I think that's what's so beautiful, even though it feels painful to be in that sort of chrysalis, if you will, that in-between stage of when you're a caterpillar growing into a butterfly. And I think, when you have these moments in your life where you are going from the caterpillar to the butterfly constantly, because you're constantly you're learning all the time. And I know our listeners are like addicted to learning. They're constantly, how can I be better, develop myself personally, professionally? We're high performers. That's just who we are. But that doesn't mean that you're alone in this journey and that you have to feel like you need to navigate change on your own, because coaches have coaches for a reason. Like, I have so many mentors and so many coaches that I've worked with over the years, and I know Paul's the same. And you just can't do it on your own. You can be so close to something like your business, like a relationship that you just can't see clearly. And sometimes you need that outside perspective, or you need that freedom or that space to talk it out, because you have all the answers inside of you. There's nothing that we're not telling you that you don't know already, but that you sometimes need to be just reminded about, and give yourself that permission to say, yeah, I'm not feeling okay, actually. When someone asks you, how are you feeling? You can be honest and say, you know what, actually, I'm having a tough time. And it's that vulnerability as well, isn't it, Paul, that we're so afraid as men and women. We're afraid to be vulnerable. We're afraid to show that I don't want to use the word weak, but that we're human, we have a range of emotions, and some of those emotions are driven by external things that happen that we can't control. And some of them are reminders of, actually, yeah, you can control this, but you're choosing not to. But why? Like, why are you choosing to be angry? Like, why are you choosing to let this set you off, or whatever the case may be? And it's good to experience those emotions, because you have to. There's like we heard last week from Kaz, do not suppress your emotions, ladies and gents, because that is going to wreak havoc on your body and all sorts of places. But yeah, I mean, what we really wanted to achieve today was, helping you see that change is inevitable, change is natural, it's a part of life. And sometimes you don't know you're in a transition state, and it's so easy to see the success story without seeing the journey. Like, oh, so and so, they are so successful and they've got this and that. But if you understand people's journeys and stories, my God, they've got, like Kaz last week. My goodness, she had an incredible story. If you haven't heard that podcast episode, definitely go back. But anyway, now I'm ranting. But yeah, it's just something we get so passionate about here at Modern Self Mastery, because it's just everything. And yeah,
it's like, I think sometimes you think, I'm done with superficial.
Yeah.
And I think we understand, or we perhaps could lend ourselves to understand, the only constant is change.
Yeah.
Nothing stays the same. It's a law of the universe. So when you don't feel like you're growing or making progress or learning something new, it tends to cause suffering. And that's where going through the motions. So change can be as good as a rest. A change in environment can be absolutely key critical. So just getting out of your environment and doing things is incredible. I think if we look at ourselves as a pencil, and let's say that we're a pencil for life, right? Every now and again, that pencil needs sharpening. And if we could feel ourselves as that pencil, that's going to hurt. That's going to really hurt. And we're going to have a few of those sharpenings during our life. And each time that is bloody painful. But it's essential and it's required. And that's the layers coming off of the protective structures that have kept us safe and now holding us back. And I think once you become aware of that, you think, I no longer accept that and I want to move on. And I must become who I really am and show that authentically in my life through what I'm doing. That's the value of life, isn't it? The value of life is not what you get, it's who you become in the process. That's the value of life, right? And that I really liked. And a couple of people asked me at this amazing event, what do you do? And I just wanted to finish with that. I said, I'll tell you who I am. And then I asked this guy, I said, tell me who you are without telling me what you do. And it was really interesting because there was a massive silence.
Yeah.
No one's ever asked me that, and I can't answer that question.
Interesting.
And so I think that's it. One, it's good to have a real conversation.
Yeah.
I don't really care massively about what you do, but I'm really interested in who you are and what actually means something to you. Because I think then it's horses and jockeys that I found that super successful people, you put them practically on any horse, in any strategy, in any type of business, and they'll win. Because you take yourself wherever you go. So I think it's really good if you know who you are without what you do.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. So someone asks you the question, like, who are you? We should be able to answer that question, and that's a big one. And I think that's what we're looking for, isn't it, in life, to know who we are and live our life through those values, and what that means to us is a meaningful life, well lived, and that sets an example for others around you to follow. And that's how I want to be remembered. It's for sure. And yeah, so it was a very interesting conversation. It's like I just want to get past the bullshit. I want to get past that. I want to know who you are, what you value. That's what I want to really know. Who do you wish to be? Tell me about that. What impact you want to have that strikes emotion. I want to get to the emotion of the thing, which is vulnerability. It's just being real, right? But yeah, some interesting stuff we've touched on there. But hopefully that's helpful. But you've got to know, okay, I don't feel right. I feel off. I need to take a hard stop. I need to assess where I am and where I want to be, what my values are, live through those in my days, create something that's meaningful. I've got to be growing, and there can be more important areas of my life that are more important, but I want to feel connected to that in my day and know that I'm moving the needle towards where I want to be. And then we have something to look forward to, which will create positive emotion, momentum, and the general feeling of aliveness, so that you can stop and notice the corner of a room. You can stop and notice the cloud formation when you're walking, because you're just in love with life again. You feel the aliveness come back into you, and that's essentially why we do this, why we're here, what we're doing. Essentially, that's what self-mastery is, because there is nothing else. I did a post, I don't know if it was today or a little while ago. It's like, don't try and change the world first. Change yourself first and lead by example. And it's because that's effectively what it's all about. It's like, we've got to, we don't want to go out and try and change the world. That's what we might try and do first, but you've got to change yourself first and live through that. Because I had a good go at the other way round, and I realised actually all roads lead to self again. It all leads to self. Like, the messages it comes back is like, oh, that's a strong lesson. That's a strong lesson that I need to take on board, and I'll keep getting those lessons until I start learning and practicing what the solution is, and I've learned that lesson. Otherwise, I'll keep getting the reminder, and I think, well, we've touched on a massive amount in this short space of time, because it's human behaviour. It's like what creates the positive and negative emotions, and it's not that we never stop feeling negative emotions, but you deal with it much, much better. You become a healthy striver instead of an anxious performer, a perfectionist, and all that sort of stuff that's just causes so much stress in our lives we can all do without, really.
Be the change you want to see in this world.
Simply, isn't it?
That's what it's all about. And, Paul summarized a lot of practical strategies that we talked about. And I'll just say this one thing, bringing it back to the Wellness 360 framework, is the purpose life element. And the purpose life element, the external layer, is like, what are you passionate about? Knowing your passions. And I say that plural, like you will have multiple passions. Some of them will maybe lead to a career. Some of them will just be a hobby, and it's fine. And then the internal layer is feeling fulfilled. But the energetic layer is authenticity. And so you described it all as you were saying, but I just wanted to bring it back to that framework, because we are really creating this wellness revolution, and it's redefining what wellness actually is, and that is a state of being. It's an active process of making choices that lead you to a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. It's not just a spa day. It's not a vacation.
Not a bubble bath. No.
Not a bubble. If it is and it's not, right? Like, all these things lead you to this state of being. That's amazing. I love a good bubble bath. With a drop of lavender oil. Oh my goodness. Look out. But anyway, I think we'll end it there, Paul, because we've both lost it. But no, just kidding. We do hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode with us. Let us know if you're navigating change, and we'll share a little bit more what we've got, coming up in terms of helping you do that reset that you've been really wanting to do, not just in your business or your career, but in really all aspects of your life, so that you just evolve into and become the person that you want to see, that you become the change that you want to see in this world. Because like we always say, it starts with you. Everything, you are everything. Everything starts with you.
Totally. Yeah. What a perfect place to end, to be the change you want to see in the world. That sums it up perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And let us know. So just let us know what you're struggling with most. We do this because we want the feedback, we want the notes, we want the messages, we want to know what you're struggling with most, so we can help you move past that with grace and poise and in the right state to live the best life you possibly can. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.